A Musical Life with Kayhan Kalhor, master of Persian music and the Kamancheh. Kayhan Kalhor is one of the greatest living masters of the Kamancheh, a 3- or 4-stringed Persian spiked fiddle and ancient predecessor to the modern cello. Kayhan performs around the world extensively as a soloist and collaborator with a wide variety of musicians, including Yo-Yo Ma and the Silk Road Ensemble. Welcome to A Musical Life. I'm Hugh Sung. Kamancheh master Kayhan Kalhor is one of the founding members of the Silk Road Ensemble. The Kamancheh is an incredibly soulful, deeply expressive instrument that can sound like the human voice or a woodwind instrument in the right hands. Talking with Kayhan gave me a wonderful opportunity to explore the world of Persian classical music, a field that's completely new to me, with an outside perspective that I imagine might be similar to someone who doesn't know anything about Western classical music. What should I be listening for? What are the elements helpful to understand so that I can gain a deeper appreciation for the beautiful sounds I hear? Let's start by listening to a duet with Kayhan and Erdal Erzincan, a Turkish folk musician playing the baklama, a type of plucked string instrument similar to the Western lute. Kayhan, it is a tremendous honor and privilege to have you on my show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor for me.
So I'd like to begin with the Kamancheh, the instrument that you are considered one of the best virtuosos of. And I understand that the word itself means little bow in Persian. Is that correct?
A little hunting bow, yes.
A little hunting bow.
Yeah, because I think, we know that this instrument in its primitive way or shape was a plucked instrument, and then usually people believe that both instruments came after the plucked instruments. So if we think that way. I think that happened in Persia for historical reasons a lot earlier than Europe. And, somebody decided to use a hunting bow and make an instrument sound, and they liked the sound of it. And they called the instrument that was, produced after Kamancheh, which means a little hunting bow, so hunting bow is kaman. And Kamancheh is a little diminutive adjective for that make things smaller in Persian. So if you have che at the end of any words, that means that little something. So so I think they realized that they cannot play it with a hunting bow because that was a long thing and it was difficult. So they had to make a smaller version of it. So that's why probably.
For our folks, because this is an audio-only show,
Yeah.
if you could help us understand how is it built? I understand it's sometimes called the spiked fiddle, but please, if you could describe it for us, what do we see when we are seeing you play the Kamancheh?
Okay. Well, the spiked fiddle is the ethnomusicologist term to describe this instrument because there is an end pin at the bottom of the instrument. There is a round, hollowed sound box covered by a piece of skin, usually sheepskin, very thin sheepskin, and the bridge falls on the piece of skin, and the string fall on the bridge, and the whole sound is projected from that sound box coming out of or projected out of that sound box through the skin. So it gives the instrument a very human sound quality, human voice quality. So that makes it very different from the Western bowed instruments, where you have the sound coming out of a wooden box, and there is nothing in between.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember from watching the film, the Music of Strangers, Yo-Yo Ma referred to the Kamancheh as the great grandfather of the European cello.
That is correct.
Yes.
That is correct, because Kamancheh was basically the forefather of the Rebek family. And Rebek family was introduced to Europe through, I think, Ottoman Empire, or a lot earlier, maybe through Moors in Europe. And then all viola da gamba and viol family came from that, and it changed shape, and somehow the skin was replaced with wood because of, I think, geographical reason. Because Europe is a very humid place, and Iran's not. So all the instruments actually, are, as we know, are built according to the geographical location and the material they could get. For example, maple is a wood that it's found greatly in Europe, but in Iran we don't have good maple. What we use to build instruments is mainly mulberry or walnut wood. So in some parts they use coconut shell, however small, but to make the same instrument in North Africa, for example, or humid countries that they actually have coconuts there. So it depends. We have this shape that this hollowed shape in every culture, and that uses this kind of instrument similar to Kamancheh, but they use their own material to build it.
Now, it's interesting that you mentioned the skin of the instrument producing a very human-like sound. I'm thinking of the Korean taegum, which is a flute that has a piece of skin over the mouth, I think in the mouthpiece or very close to it, which has that very distinctive almost singing quality as well. That's very different from just an open flute. But also what's really remarkable is the bow itself, the way that you hold the bow. It's a variable tension bow. And I was watching videos of you demonstrating it. You can actually loosen or tighten with your hand the tension of that bow.
With the fingers, with three fingers, index finger, middle finger, and the one beside that, you hold the bow, and then you control the tension with those three fingers.
And you come up with an incredible range of sounds that can go from an absolute whisper to something that really it's so vibrant.
You can actually play. This might be an exaggeration, but you can actually play on one hair, and when you have the bow that loose, and produce really whisper kind of, breathy sound. And when you pull and use all of the bow with pressure, you can project a lot of sound.
And you also rotate the Kamancheh with your
Correct.
left hand to maneuver through the
That
four
is,
strings,
yeah,
right?
that is why it's called spike fiddle, or
Ah.
the shape uh, is actually made that way. So you, in order to reach different strings, you will turn the instrument with your left hand. So the left hand is doing three things at once: is holding the instrument, turning it, and finger the strings. So you turn the instrument to reach different strings, and the right hand, the bowing hand, is it's just done in one direction. Where in violin, for example, you change the bow on different strings with your elbow and sometimes with your wrist and shoulder.
It seems like, to my eyes, my untrained eyes, that playing the Kamancheh is much more ergonomically healthy than playing the violin or even the cello. What do you think?
Well, I shouldn't be the one to say that, but I can, I think there is some degree of comfort, doing that and playing that. In German, bass playing, they still have the same method. And I'm sure when the viol family or Rebecca, was introduced to the West, they used the same kind of bow, as you can see it in old paintings and stuff. But it's somehow, when violin came up under the chin, they couldn't do that anymore. And they had to put the bow on the string. So the bow in violin and, viola and all those instruments, it falls on the string from above. And it's not logical anymore to hold it the way I hold it.
Now, the bow itself, do you use horsehair just like Western violins do? Or
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
wonderful. That's interesting.
Every bowed instrument in the world uses horsehair. I don't know what is between horsehair and sound. I think there are a lot of natural ties and reasons for that. If you look at it this way, that all the natural products or natural, material that we use to make our instruments sound, and how we take that from nature, and how somehow, they have taken things from nature, and we take these things from them, and then make it into sound again, into nature. It's a beautiful circle that if we think of it that way, it's just beautiful.
Tell us a little bit. Now, there are, I think the traditional Kamanches had 3 silk strings, but the modern
Correct.
ones have 4 metal ones. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Yes. This is how art goes around and comes back, because the fourth string, the lower string, is an imitation of violin, believe it or not.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that happened in the beginning of 20th century when the violin was introduced to the Middle East.
Now, how are they tuned? I heard that is it tuned the same way, or is Persian tuning different from European tuning?
Persian tuning is definitely very different from European tuning, because we can tune in basically in everything we want: thirds, fourths, minor thirds, major thirds, and sometimes in quarter tones, fifths. It depends on the mode you play, because as we know, this is modal music, and it wasn't made to be harmonic. So what is important is the tonic and what goes around it. So it's a total different concept. And you can change your tuning all the time. It's not a fixed tuning as you have in Western instruments.
Oh, fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. So if you don't mind, for some of our listeners who have never heard Persian Kamancheh playing before, could you recommend some tracks for them to get familiar with your playing, with your music? What would you recommend that they listen to from the records that you have produced?
Just gathering stars like dust.
I'd like to just spend a little time talking about Persian classical music. Now, it's interesting. I'm a classical pianist, and
Yeah,
one of the hardest things that I have sometimes is helping people who have never been to a classical music concert understand what to listen for. For many of these people,
it's like like
yeah.
yeah. If you know Rumi, the great Persian poet, he has in story that these people went into a room, and it was dark at night, and there was an elephant there. So, and each one of them tried to describe the elephant,
Yes, yes, yes.
and they usually described it, with the kind of understanding they got from touching that particular part of elephant.
Mm.
So, it's hard to describe music and the sound and what kind of effect it might have on you. But I think if we want to talk about the theory of music, that would be a little more possible.
Perhaps we could touch on a little bit to help folks get an understanding of how rich and how absolutely beautiful this music is. Again, I'm speaking as a complete novice and a student,
Thank
so
you.
as I'm looking to you as my ostad. I believe that's the word for the master.
That
Is
is
that
the word
correct?
for that is the word for teacher or master. Yes.
So if you will be my ostad and help us understand, so a lot of Persian music,
Yeah.
you play in an improvised style, and yet there is a common repertoire of more than 200 short melodies or melodic movements called.
Or 400
Oh,
to 500 in
oh
some schools.
wow! Oh, I see. So,
Yeah.
and these movements
Yeah.
are called gushe. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Look, what we have as a melodic collection, let me start from here,
sure.
is called redif, which
Yes.
means order or chain,
Mm.
because they come one after another in a logical way. In terms of melody and tonic, and if you start on tonic in one section of it, you probably start or stop on the second degree of the scale in the next one. So
Mm.
all of these melodies they've been put together through the years in the history of Persian music, and we call it redif, everything there is. So in some schools of redif playing, you have up to 200, 250, and in some schools, 450, 500 pieces that you have to memorize as a student.
Mm. Mm.
So this melodic collection is the base for, or the basic knowledge for improvisation.
Oh wow.
By the time you learn all of this, that doesn't mean you're an improviser. This is the material you're going to use to improvise. This is the alphabet, basically.
Oh wow. So it's
Yeah.
like the
So
jazz standards, like jazz players, they need to know a certain
exactly.
body of
Exactly. If you
songs.
know the
Yeah.
alphabet and in English language and you're able to read and write, that doesn't mean you will become a poet or a
Yes.
writer.
Yes. Yes.
So the improvisation part is the writing a poetry or writing a play or anything. That's your skill in what you can do with the language.
Mm. Are these 500 melodies? Are they written down, or are they strictly passed down as an oral tradition?
They used to, the whole tradition was oral, and in the beginning of 20th century, as I told you before, there was a tendency to westernize everything. They adopted the Western way of notation,
Ah.
and of course, some of them are written, which is just to memorize, or to remember, basically.
Hmm.
But I personally prefer the oral traditional way because these melodies are not they don't mean to be fixed. They shouldn't be fixed. They change all the time according to what your teacher thinks. These are not molded in something. That they're not concrete. They're subject to change, and by remembering them and trying to memorize them, you develop this memory for music, and which helps you to improvise, further in your career as a musician, not as a student. So I think there is a philosophy behind everything there is, but of course, some people like to read it and to write it down, which is not bad by itself, but it doesn't really help the music. It's just there as a collection that's written for some people, in case no other musicians are around, or it's just to help people remember, not to help people learn.
Now, it's interesting. I understand that the United Nations actually registered radifs as part of UNESCO's list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity. So this is
it belongs to everyone.
Yeah, just wonderful. So if somebody wanted to, are there recordings of all the radifs available if somebody wanted to learn the basic ones?
Yes, they are. There's a few masters that teach radif all the time, and their knowledge of radif is extensive. So they have recorded the radifs, yes.
Fascinating.
But in the old times, each master had its own flavor in radif, and that's what made it really, really nice, because each school, each city, had their own different interpretations, but the same philosophy behind it.
It's interesting because I remember my old piano teacher would complain about recordings. He would actually forbid us as his students to listen to recordings because he was afraid that if we listened to a recording, we would have our interpretations locked by that. He preferred to have that one-on-one discovery of the music itself. And I wonder, as our Western...
I think he was really wise.
Yeah, it seems that, your musical tradition of passing it down orally rather than being fixed in a recording or written down, there is a certain freedom that you are able to express, yes?
Yeah, because music changes through the years and styles change. What we play right now as Persian classical music, it's not certainly, what we played 100 years ago and 500 years ago. Music changes all the time, and this is what keeps the traditions alive and breathing. I think if we just keep it in a fixed way for every generation and record it, and we're not doing justice to it, and we're making people have a different understanding about it, because a fixed identity that never changes will die soon. It cannot survive for hundreds of years. And you have to be able to change it according to your language and your generation of musicians and technicians, basically.
It becomes sterile, doesn't it? There's a sterilization that happens.
Definitely. I'm definitely against that, to notate it and teach it as a notated entity.
Now, in a classical concert, there is, in a very, very traditional classical concert, there are certain formulas or certain forms or certain expectations. You'll have an intermission in the middle. You clap at certain times. So I'm wondering if you can help us understand what a typical Persian performance when you're performing. Now, I've read someplace that there are 6 different, not always the same, but there's generally 6 elements of the traditional performance. Is that true? Could you describe them for us? I have the names written down, but I'm afraid to pronounce them.
That is kind of tongue-in-cheek description of it. But, what I can tell you is that we have all this melodic collection. We have all those melodies and pieces that we have memorized as students. And then, by the time you improvise, it's up to you that which one in which mode you use. And is it something you want that you use 7 of them or 10 of them or just 2 of them? To me, a good improviser is someone who uses less and less traditional material and just uses his or her own imagination to do that. And that is, to me, a definition of a very, very good improviser, that's able to use the melodies and create something rather than just repeating things, which actually we have musicians that do that. And they're very, very loyal to, the traditional material. And, they have an argument there. I can't say it's bad or good, but, for me personally, it is the whole art of improvisation in Persian music or in Indian music, for example, is to play something you haven't played before using the traditional frame.
When I've been listening to a good portion of your music, and I am so breathtaken by the incredible variety of ideas and sounds and emotions and sound pictures that you were able to create. From to Western eyes, it looks like a relatively small instrument, but you create such a symphony of sounds and textures. It is just absolutely
well,
stunning.
I think the tradition and the instrument and the techniques, give me that ability to do that. And I should be thankful to the musical tradition that I come from. I think this is not, the only musical tradition that urges people to, or the musicians to improvise. We have that in North Indian, South Indian music, to a degree in Chinese music, all Central Asian music, and African music. So the Western classical music way of interpretation and reading music and be very loyal to written music is obviously not the only way.
Yes.
But it doesn't make anything better than the other or less important than the other. This is our way to do things.
And it's interesting. Persian culture, I understand, has been so widespread that you can actually find its influence all the way from Spain to China and even in Japan.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to, of course, you are a member of the Silk Road Ensemble. We'll get to that in just a bit, but have you had other opportunities to collaborate with other Asian artists or Japanese musicians?
Definitely, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I tour on my own, and I concertize a lot. This is what I do. So one of my passions is to make music with others from the cultures that improvisations are very important in them. I have done projects with North Indian musicians, Turkish musicians, Kurdish musicians, Chinese musicians, and then I'm planning to do a joint project with and a musician from Mali, Tumani Djibote, who plays kora. So I'm really interested to expand this horizon and see what improvisation and what creation on spot means in every culture.
I'd like to now touch a little bit on your wonderful relationship with the great cellist Yo-Yo Ma. How did you two meet? How did you two start to collaborate on this incredible world music collective, the Silk Road Project?
Actually, our friendship goes to the time before the Silk Road Project was started. We played this piece of Richard Daniel Corps for cello and Kamancheh with New York Philharmonic and Lyon Symphony. So that was the first thing we did together. I was approached by him, as a curious person that he is. He wanted to know about Kamancheh and Persian music, and I was totally fascinated. He's just trying to learn more and more about music, and that turned into a really nice friendship. And I think a year after that, he came up with this idea of Silk Road Project for various reasons, and fortunately, I was part of that. And I've been working with him and the project, the Silk Road Ensemble, ever since.
And it's such an incredible fusion of different styles, Western, Eastern. Well, there's even,
It is.
Those are very, very broad terms.
It's the face of modern living, and in every way. This is just the musical face of it. I think the kind of world that we live in, it's not the same place again. It's not that, the understanding and the concept of the world, when we talk about it, and music has changed greatly.
Yes.
The world, we can't describe the world as 18th century person did.
Yeah.
And it's certainly a different place, all this technology and all this facilities that we have. It has brought us together more and more and made us closer. So I think this is the musical translation of that kind of thinking and that kind of philosophy.
Mm. And looking, I speaking from a Western classical musician's point of view, one of my big concerns, of course, is the future of my art. How will it
Definitely.
survive, and how can we find more audiences, younger audiences, to appreciate
Right.
what we do in a society that's becoming more and more fractured, and with the attention spans getting shorter and shorter, and with
Right.
so many other
Right.
distractions. As you mentioned, there's technology, there's all these forms of entertainment. I'm wondering, what are your thoughts? How is Kamancheh playing? How is Persian classical music? How will it survive in the future? Is there a strong following with students and teaching? How is
There
that?
is there is a very, very strong following. I mean, when I started to play Kamanche, maybe there were like 2 or 3 players who played this instrument, but now there are hundreds of thousands playing this instrument in Iran. Yeah, so there is hope, and there is certainly a good future. But I think the main theme here for Western classical music and music in my world is the sound, and we're trying to maybe create newer sounds, and our ears are more interested to hear newer sounds and newer possibilities. And this is what is happening with Western composers. You have Osvaldo Golija, for example, as a modern composer, using Kamanche and accordion and klezmer clarinet and bagpipe. And this wouldn't have happened in Beethoven's time or Schubert's time. And so I think the sound is the answer. We shouldn't really be thinking of form, traditions, and other elements in every kind of music. There is harmony, there is counterpoint, there is all these forms that people try to write music in. But I think it's the main theme for music in 21st century is sound. And every good composer, thinks about newer sounds, as John Cage did, as Armand Scheffer did, and Karl-Heinz Stockhausen did. So I think it's about the sound and maybe texture.
If I'm a young person and I'm listening to the legendary Kayhan Kalhor play, and I am so struck with his playing that I want to learn
You're
to
very
play the
kind
Kamanche.
to me.
I'm speaking quite honestly. If I wanted to learn to play like you do, or to at least become competent, are there schools to go to learn, or do I need to seek out an ostad, a master?
Oh, definitely. There are countless schools of music in Iran, and I really don't know those many teachers that I would go to, because of to discuss, that's a different discussion. But definitely you're able to, buy a good Kamanche, because they're nice, very good makers around as well, and find a teacher as well. And I'm very proud of that, because I think Persian music, or music in Iran today, is flourishing. It has flourished, and we have a great number of young musicians who are seeking to learn this music.
So would I need to go to Iran to study, or are there teachers in other countries that I would have access to? Do you have any idea on the accessibility?
I think, no, you don't have to go to Iran. I think there are a great number of professional musicians, migrated to other countries. And, you have Kamanche players in, I think, Southern California and other parts of the U.S. You have Kamanche players in Europe, and other musicians on other instruments in Persian music.
It's so exciting to hear this wonderful traditional music flourishing and finding new audiences. I mean, what do you think is the appeal of the Kamanche and Persian music to the new generation? What do you think that it provides for them that they've been looking for?
I think we had this renaissance, unwanted renaissance in music, actually. I mean, not that we didn't want it, but we didn't think of it that way, and nobody planned it, but it just happened after the revolution, because the whole manifestation of the Iranian revolution was, to find or think about our own values. And when that happens, you have this kind of result. I think everything just went well, and people wanted to listen to Persian music more than before, and as a result of that, they wanted to play it more than before. And I'm not talking about the quality that we're producing, which is kind of low, but the quantity is certainly really high.
And you need amateur players to become your audience too, just like amateur piano players are the best audiences for piano concerts, right?
Definitely. They're really, really, really good listeners. Whenever I play in Iran, it's just like a dream, and they just drink the music. They eat it, rather than listening to it.
It's interesting. There are certain cultures that I've visited where music seems to be such a passionate part of the culture. I remember being in Brazil, and I was shocked to feel that from the people that music is such a much deeper part of who they are than, say, other audiences in different countries, which maybe this music is just like sound wallpaper.
I have also seen that. You're right. I have also seen that in North Africa and Arab Middle Eastern countries. They're really, really good music listeners. And what makes it really nice is that they participate.
Yes.
And they wow and and they don't hesitate letting you know how they feel, and they're connecting to your music, which is kind of missed or somehow is lost in Western classical music. In times, in Mozart time or Beethoven time, it wasn't that way. To people to clap, to wait and clap, at the end of the symphony or the opera. If they liked an aria, they clapped, and they performed it another time. Sometimes they performed a beautiful aria for 10, 15 times in a row, and then they continued the rest of the opera. So I think at some point, that was there with the Western classical music as well. But the formality and the elite listening to this music somehow changed it to a very formal listening experience.
It set a very high barrier for behavior instead of letting people feel honestly what the music is saying to them.
Definitely. I really enjoyed that. I was playing this concert in Cairo, and I always watched this old concerts in black and white. Kulthum, Farid al-Atrash. I'm in love with Egyptian music of 60s and 70s. And, it was incredible. People just talked to me, when I was playing. They just let me know how they feel. They clap, they express their feelings. I would say that was the most enjoyable solo concert I had. It's as if you're part of the audience and they're part of the music process. So this is the kind of reaction we want for solo improvisations or duo improvisations. So when people participate and let you know that you're doing the right thing.
Maybe it starts with the performers talking to the audience while they're playing. I don't know, inviting them to say something.
Sometimes I've seen that. Well, I get too wound up in music that I never do that. But I think it is nice to, because, in what I do in this kind of music, I should be able to feel the audience. And feel their breaths and feel their, vibes. So, sometimes you close your eyes and the audience is totally quiet, but you get the vibe. You get the vibe that, what's happening, who's getting tired, who likes this. It just comes to you on stage. And if they let you know, it just helps you more to grow and play better, of course.
Don't you love those moments where the audience, you have them in the palm of your hand because they cannot
I
breathe?
know.
Do you love those moments?
I
Yeah.
know. I live for it.
Yeah.
I just don't love it.
Okay.
That's my life.
Yeah.
I think this is why I love live performances, and that's what I do. Composition, I do from time to time, but it's not something that I don't like to sit in front of my desk and do this for a month or so. I rather create on stage and with people witnessing it.
So now I have a new dream. I think my new dream is one day to play
Yeah.
a Kamanche and piano duo with you.
Why not? Why
Uh,
not? Why not? We can do that with a number of our string players in the ensemble. That they actually have a quartet as well, named Brooklyn Rider.
Yeah.
We do that a lot. We
With
just
Johnny
create
Gandelsman.
music.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. We just create music on spot and we talk about it. And sometimes it's the music that's produced on spot is so beautiful that we try to repeat it again, and it's not possible.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
that moment.
Mm.
Yeah. So I think that improvisation is an element that Western music is missing at this moment. It wasn't always like that. We know all the great virtuosos that became great composers, in Renaissance, in Baroque, and classical time. They were all improvisers. Paganini was a great improviser. Beethoven, Mozart, Schubert, Schumann, you name them. It just, all of them were great musicians. And they improvised, and that's how they started to be known. And then at some point, they decided to put the music on paper so somebody else can play it as well. But I'm sure when they played it, it was totally different.
Yes. 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 Kayhan, thank you so much for sharing and being so generous with sharing about you, your music, and just the beauty of what you do. I'm so inspired by our conversation together.
It's a great pleasure. I hope your listeners enjoy it.
Well, I hope you and I can meet together and play together one of these days in person.
Definitely. You can count on it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
For links to Kayhan's website, visit the show notes at amusicallife.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter to get the latest updates on future episodes. You can also subscribe to A Musical Life through iTunes or with your favorite podcast playing app and get new episodes automatically downloaded onto your smartphone, tablet, or computer. If you enjoy these stories about making music and the things that move our souls, please tell a friend about this show and consider posting a short review on iTunes at amusicallife.com/review. Thank you for your support. Until next time, I'm Hugh Sung, and I wish you a musical life.